Today I want to walk you through the setup of IndieWeb Drupal module, and the reason I'm doing it is because I want to help you if you're trying to do the same thing, if you're trying to use Drupal for following the IndieWeb principles. IndieWeb module can basically solve a lot of problems for you, but it requires some configuration, and it is not always obvious, because you have to, of course, read the documentation, and all the documentation links, or rather I should say the GitHub page, has a very good set of instructions, and I followed each and everything. I was also in touch with the developer. I raised some issues, and I think now I have a decent, or I should say good understanding of how this module works. And also you need to understand various concepts of IndieWeb. So in this video, I will not really do a massive deep dive. I quickly want to walk you through the setup, and I hope it will also give you some indication and some ideas and some pointers. Although each and everything is there on the documentation, I highly recommend you to basically read the documentation. You can start by, of course, this page. You can download it. I downloaded IndieWeb. I installed IndieWeb module using Composer, which I believe is the right way, because you will then be able to also download the dependencies. So when you install the module, you can start enabling the modules that you want to basically have, all the features that you want to have in your site in line with the IndieWeb principles. So you can start by enabling, in fact, all of them. If not, I think you can probably enable all of them. I still haven't enabled and played with the contacts and web sub, but I've enabled feeds, IndieAuth, IndieWeb, media cache, microformats 2, Micropub, microsub, post context, and web mention. So let me try to explain whatever I know about these modules and how it works. Now, if you go to the IndieWeb section here, you will be presented with this interface where you can basically enable or configure things. So starting with the IndieWeb tab, ignore this part here. It is probably a bit annoying, but apologies. So here you don't really have much, just some information. Go to web mention, and web mention is something that I believe is good if you enable it, because maybe someone is mentioning your link, or someone is replying to your post, and you want that reply or like maybe, or some kind of interaction, a social interaction coming back to your site. So you can enable it. I've enabled it. So use built-in web mention endpoint. So it will come with some, this module will basically do all the job for you. You just need to enable it. And I'm showing you my configurations because in case you're trying to do the same thing, it will probably help you. So I want my web mentions to be processed on cron run, and I'm also logging the messages in my log, so I can take a look at what is happening if things are not working. Detect identical web mentions. You want to enable this to avoid duplications. And I believe you also want to expose the web mention link tag. Ping back, you can enable these two. I have not enabled the third one. I'm not really sure what exactly exposing ping back header link will do, but this is basically my configuration. And you also have other options here, like sending, when you have to send some web mentions to, let us say, Twitter or GitHub. These are the two services that I have enabled. In my previous video, I explained how I can send my note to Twitter, and I can also receive further replies and interactions and likes back to my site. So for that, you need to use Bridgy, which is not very difficult to configure. All you need to do, you need to basically add these lines here, like in this format, and clear your cache. And then when you go to the node, you have to basically enable these. So these will be enabled as checks. These fields will appear in your node form, where you have the option to publish your node to Twitter, or if you're filing a bug, to maybe GitHub, which I have enabled now. So when I can actually file a bug on GitHub from my Drupal site. And you also have to, this is something that I have done and I think it works for me. So if you want to have a custom URL for for basically the web mention, like if you want to, let us say, send a reply to Twitter, or maybe you want to raise a GitHub issue, or maybe you are replying to a comment on your Drupal site. So you can always have a custom URL where you can post the link. If you're using the clients like Indigenous, these links will be automatically populated for you. So in case you're doing it manually from the site, you can have these fields enabled here. Then you can select this web mention entity reference field, and I think it will probably come on its own. I think it is built in with the module, so you just need to select it. This is especially useful for comments when you're replying to a comment. And rest of the configurations are as it is. And I'm always sending and receiving web mentions on cron run. So you can leave it as cron run. I think that is a good idea. Another option is here to basically also process or create the comments. So basically I want, if someone is replying to my post, I want those replies to become a comment. And I'm not directly publishing them because comments will come and comments will be saved, but I need to approve them, which I think is a good idea. And make sure that you are using the web mention entity reference field, which will come, I believe, I don't remember creating this field. It will come with the module, I think. And that is it. So formats on this page, I don't really do any change. I think I left everything as it is. Like you want to have the H entry on nodes, on comments. You may also want to know, you have to basically add this e-content class, I believe. So I think these things are important if you are if you're trying to make your nodes compatible with these micro formats as per the IndieWeb configuration specifications. One thing that I think you need to do is you need to exclude the p name from your notes, because notes are like tweets. They don't really have title. So I think we have to exclude it, and that is it really. So I didn't really do any other change on this apart from selecting my node content type. Node content type. I'm not really using events yet, but I may use events maybe in future. Feeds, I think I showed this in my previous video. If you want to configure feeds so that people can subscribe to your post, you can create different feeds. So I've created a feed for all of my notes, my blogs, my check-ins, and that is it. So if you do this, I think that is all you need to do. And just make sure you expose, or basically you have this entry here, like the author of the feed. So you can copy this and you can paste it as it is. And this is pretty much it. Let me go back. And when you have a feed added, you can add multiple feeds if you want. Right now I'm just experimenting. So I just have one feed called all the post. Then Micropub is the most interesting tab. This is where you will configure how you want to send, or basically enable your post to send the request, or basically syndicate your request to other platforms or other sites, other IndieWeb sites. So first enable it, and to be honest, it is not very complicated. All you need to do if you take a look at, let us say, note, you have to enable it. You have to make sure that it is so basically Micropub is not really for sending. I think it is for let us say you are using a client like Indigenous, and when your Indigenous app is creating a note or creating a like or creating a repost or reply, so whenever you're doing something on the app, you can also do the same thing on your site. It will basically make sure that if you're creating a note, it will save the note to the note content type. If you're creating a reply, it will create a reply or save it as a node reply or a reply content type. You have to basically map these fields like link field where you have the URL, where you might have the URL, and maybe you want to send the web mention, which I always keep it as checked. You have to specify the content field, the text format, the image field if you have images. I do have images in most of my posts. Audio, video I'm not really using, and I'm using the tags in most of the posts. So you just need to enable your basic fields like link field, content type, and author, and maybe you want to have the status as published. So let us say if I'm replying to a post from the app, Indigenous app, or maybe a client like Monocle, it will directly publish it on the site, and it can also send a web mention if there is a link field filled in. And this is pretty much you have to do for each and every type of content. And then you have the micro sub. This is something that you can configure. So basically I have defined different channels and sources. So basically these are the sites, or not sites but channels, and within these channels I may have some sources. For example, if I show you my IndieWeb sources, I am following few people, their feeds, and people can follow my feed if I have enabled feed in the feed tab that I showed you earlier. So basically you can configure these things here, and you do have some settings which I didn't really change. I just enabled this use, I think it was already enabled, use built-in microsub endpoint, and it will fetch the items on cron run. So whenever there is a new item in those feeds which I am following, it will pick it up on cron run. Then you have Indie auth. You just need to, I didn't do any change there. For media cache, again, no change. And post context is important because let us say you're replying to a post or you're liking something, you may want to display the content that you're liking, like a snippet. So let me show you how it looks like, and let me very quickly show you my likes, maybe, for example. So if I'm liking, let us say, a link or Twitter post, it doesn't really work for Twitter, but if I'm liking a post on someone else's indie website, it will pick it up. It will pick up basically some context or a summary or a trimmed version of that particular post. So it looks quite nice, I think, because you're liking this post, and there is also a link to that particular actual post. Now, talking about the configurations of the node of the content type, you have to, of course, make sure that few things are configured correctly. So let me show you maybe my note. Let me show you my note. So if I open the manage display, so I think starting with the edit, let us start with the edit, the first tab. Here I am using the IndieWeb settings. I'm basically selecting the field here, the field where you have the link and the post type. And manage fields is nothing really different. Basically, these are the fields that you want on your node, like especially the body, comment, maybe you have an image, maybe you have a link. I think it is always good to have a link. In my note and in my check-in, I have location, and I always have topics because I like to keep my posts with some tags. And manage form display is also nothing different here. I believe what you need to do is you need to take a look at the manage display where you have the fields. And if you look at the fields here, the most important thing here is that if you're, let us say, using a note, or if you're working on a reply or a like, should have the micro format link. And make sure you have the right class. For example, if you take a look at the configuration here, if you're, let us say, using node for replying, or if you're using the reply content type for replying, or like content type for like, then make sure you have the right format selected here. And that is pretty much it. Also, if you want your post context to be displayed, which I have displayed, you can display it here. You can bring the field in your display type. I always have the syndication link, which is filled in when I am able to post something on Twitter. I also have my Twitter and GitHub fields also here, and I think these fields need to be there because otherwise it won't really work when you are posting something or receiving some replies. So I think I now have a decent understanding of how the IndieWeb module works, and I'm basically creating these videos because I also want to help you. In case you have any questions, or maybe if you think I have mentioned something incorrectly, or maybe you want to correct me, please let me know. Especially if you are also doing the same thing in a better way. And I think this is something that this particular subject, this particular topic of keeping data with yourself on your own website, having control on what you share, what you are doing online, even with other social networking sites. And the IndieWeb principles talk about the specifications, talk about the standards. And I think even if you're not really using Drupal, you can be using just a normal custom built site. If you're using Drupal, if you're using WordPress, if you're using Known, if you're using some, if you go to the IndieWeb site, you will get a list of some CMS, some content management systems that are already compatible. There are some CMS like Known. I have used Known. I do have a Known site, which I don't really maintain, but it is quite good in terms of configuration. It works from day one. You can install it and you can start using it. But when it comes to Drupal, there is some work required, and I think that is the whole idea. Drupal is more like a content management framework. You have to configure it, you have to make it work. But I think I have now figured out how it works, and the good thing about Drupal site is that you can always control it the way you want. You can configure it the way you want. You can tweak it, and you have much more configuration options and customization options. So this is all I wanted to share in this video. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you learned something new today. Thank you very much.